So GISTE wrote an email, and basically the topic of discussion is this, where is it? This sentence. And I said, so GISTE was analyzing the sentence because that's what we're doing on list now, is on FI list, is analyzing sentences. And I had said, or he had said, object phrase, his exercise routine. Routine is the object, his is an adjective modifying routine. It says which routine. And I said, no, his says whose routine. And I wrote a long response, but just had a question, which is, basically just says, at first I say no, like no, his says whose routine, so just thought I was wrong. Then I seem to say, that it's more that which is okay, but whose is better. And I think it's a fair question because I did hedge a bit more. And I think part of the issue was I didn't have a super solid understanding of which versus whose. I still don't. And I had started to write a reply and do a video about what I was thinking, but I think what I was thinking was a bit confused. So rather than focus on my internal mental processes at some point in time in the past, I think I'll just try to figure out the right answer now in a clear way. So before anything, I think one thing to clarify is what are we talking about? What's the nature of the discussion or the argument? What are the categories of all the words that are in dispute, etc.? Because GISTE is confused about what I was saying, and then I realized that I was confused about what I was saying. So we should sort of get to some, we should start from some firmer ground and establish that, and then try and figure out more complicated issues from there if we can. So we had this expression, John gets sweaty when he does his exercise routine. Now what is his? His is, well, there's a variety of, I think, different words. So as a first step, let's rewrite this sentence as with no references, as Eliot calls them, just with the words, like the proper noun type words. And when we rewrite it, we see why we have things like he and his. Now, I found this note, so I think this is interesting. So I learned stuff like his and his exercise routine as being called a possessive adjective. And a possessive adjective is basically an adjective that you don't want to restate the phrase you're saying. It's an adjective that indicates possession, as in like it's an adjective and it tells you that some noun which it's modifying is possessed by the person being referred to in the adjective. And I think this is interesting because it says a pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. As possessive adjectives replace nouns, you will occasionally and rather unhelpfully see them classified as possessive pronouns. Look at this example. This is Sarah's hat. This is her hat. Right, because this, like Sarah's or John's, this is a possessive form of a noun. So I guess you're saying, we consider that a noun. Whereas, and likewise, some people consider his to be a pronoun because it's replacing a noun. So I was just thinking, like, all right, we were talking on List about this earlier, like, if you have see if I can find it. Oh yeah, it was the same thread. I said, I think lots of nouns, right, so GISTE said that he decided to check whether exercise can be an adjective, and Merriam-Webster's says that it can be a noun or a verb. It didn't say it's an adjective. They agreed with Merriam-Webster. Googled but didn't really find anything. Thought maybe exercise routine was like, it's like multiple nouns making up one noun, like a multi-word noun. So I say, I think lots of nouns can move into an adjective role, but you can also view situations like that as involving multi-word nouns. Both perspectives seem valid to me. And I say, metal glasses, wood table, ziti pizza. You can view metal, wood, ziti as modifiers for the things that follow them, or you could view the two words as a single noun. I think both framings are okay. And so what we see here, when we do this substitution, when we get all the reference words out and just put John's, we see, because this is the possessive form. So the possessive form sort of makes clear what's happening. As you add this apostrophe s, this is like a mark indicating, like this is a this is an adjective. I was gonna say adjectivizer or something. Like it turns nouns into something that's indicating possession, and so to indicate possession, you gotta indicate possession of what? And so you take a noun, you add the apostrophe s, and suddenly you have something that's more like an adjective. But because we don't like to repeat nouns a bunch, because when you repeat stuff a lot, it sounds repetitive, then what happens is we sort of hide the fact that we're doing that in a way. And when we write this sort of sentence, like, you really have to do the substitution, go back, see what the substitution is replacing, and then you say, aha. So we would have written John's exercise routine. John is a noun which we could turn into an adjective, and then we replace that with this, which we just treat as an adjective, like potentially on its face, just like without thinking about it. But the whole thing is built on a noun. Like, you see, we start off with John, and then we want to indicate possession, so we do John's, and then we wind up with his. And really, so this thing that of nouns moving into the adjective role it's kind of ubiquitous. It happens all the time. It happens with proper nouns, with people's names. It happens with things like substances, like metal, wood. Right. I realized I should ask a question about this possessive adjective stuff. All right, so I wrote some stuff. I wrote an email building off of this discussion here and these examples. I say, I have a question about possessive adjectives and pronouns. Consider the following examples. Sarah has a hat. This is Sarah's hat. This is her hat. Her referring to Sarah. This is hers. Hers referring to the hat being Sarah's hat. My question is how to think about stuff like Sarah's, her, and hers. So I've numbered my replies here. So in the first one, Sarah is clearly a noun. Sarah, subject, noun, and then the verb is has, and the object is hat. This is Sarah's hat. So number 2, Sarah's is a possessive form of Sarah. So by adding the apostrophe plus s to Sarah, have we changed the part of speech of the word Sarah? Is Sarah's a modifier now? Or is it kind of like a verbal where Sarah is derived from a noun and can still be thought of as a noun, but can take on roles other than strictly noun roles, a nounal? And so, right, because we did have to do something to Sarah to to make it take on this role of a modifier. We couldn't just drop Sarah. We can't say this is Sarah hat. So we did have to do something, like we have to do something to turn a verb into a gerund, or participle, or the infinitive form, or whatever. So then in this example, this is her hat, her referring to Sarah. Her seems to be modifying hat, but if Sarah's is a noun, then her seems like a pronoun. In school, I learned words like her in example 3 as being possessive adjectives, and they are typically treated as adjectives in contexts like example 3. But I found a page saying possessive adjectives are technically pronouns because they replace a noun, and that made some sense to me. It seems like if a word, so this is sort of the core of why I'm like writing this. It seems like if a word is replacing another word that we're calling a noun, then the word being used as the replacement is a pronoun. And if a word is replacing another word that we're calling an adjective, then the word being used as a replacement is a proadjective or something. And maybe nouns can do the adjective job sometimes, and maybe so can pronouns. But saying that nouns can do adjective jobs sometimes seems different than saying a particular word is actually just an adjective. So I'm wondering if there is a contradiction between viewing Sarah's as a noun and her as an adjective. As a noun in example 2 and her as an adjective in example 3 based on the fact that her seems like a pronoun, not an adjective, based on right. So let me try this again. So I'm wondering if there is a contradiction between viewing Sarah's as a noun in example 2 and her as an adjective in example 3 based on the argument that her is a pronoun, not an adjective. And at the end, I just say, I think her stands for something like her hat. Like, this is her hat, right? This is hers. So maybe it's really like a pronoun phrase. I'm okay with calling it a pronoun, though. It is, in fact, standing for a noun, I think. It just might be standing for other stuff, too. Okay, I think that's as coherent as I'm going to get this thought in the time I've allotted. So I will sum this. And just a thought here is, it's possible I'm paying too much attention to like categories and trying to label everything, but like that would not surprise me in the least. But if that's true, there's a better way to think about all this that I don't understand yet. So I should still ask the question. I'm going to say that too, because it's useful if I indicate that I know that, that's a possibility. Actually, because really my question's about Sarah's and her. Hers, I mean, I'll still I'll leave my analysis there, but in case there's a mistake. But really, this is the core of what I'm interested in, so I'll just reflect that. Of course, you just have to think about stuff like Sarah's and her. Right, and really the category is possessive words. So I reflected that. Because this is a possessive, this is a possessive. Okay. Right, so you see, like the reason I was having trouble replying to GISTE is because, like, the word I was arguing about, I can't even explain what it is. So that might cause some trouble in clear thinking. So, and like, you kind of have to go through these steps in detail and be like, okay, what does this word mean? What is this? What is this? In order to even realize you don't understand stuff. Because, like, especially if you, like, most people have the, oh, I know the name of the thing, or I know a name. They might not even know a variety of names, just a name for a thing. And so I understand the thing approach. Like, oh, that's a possessive adjective, ha ha ha. And that does not really reflect understanding, because, like, what the heck is a possessive adjective? Oh, it's an adjective that indicates possession. Well, what about the fact that it's actually a pronoun? What? Like, that's literally, like, you know, I read this, and I was like, what is it? There we go. There we go. There's a good one. Right. So, you get the idea. Oops. I need to do that. Oh, well. Okay. Had a little fun there. Unintentionally. Alright. So, actually, I might turn this into a blog post. So I'm going to end the video here, because I might just, yeah, I'm just going to end the video here. Okay. So I lied about ending the video, but I did take a little break. So I wrote an email, and part of the reason that I took a break, well, I had to do other stuff, but I have a manner of posting my emails to my blog, but the posting method requires privacy. So, like, there's information that I don't want share generally, and how I go about posting it. So, in any case, trying to be able to reply to the email that GISTE sent, where he's asking me what I meant in my reply, and I've decided that really what I should do is figure out what the right answer is to, like, how to properly explain why I said this. So I wrote an email related to this, because like I'm making a claim about what his says. Like, I'm saying, John gets sweaty when he does his exercise routine. But the point of the email that I wrote is that, like, I don't even know what I don't even know what his is, per se. Like, is it a pronoun? Is it an adjective? So I'm making claims about this word and I can't even, like, define it well. So that's a problem, right? So the first question, to be able to reply substantively to what GISTE is saying, I've got to figure out, okay, so what is his? That's the first question, so that's pending. And then the second question is, what is the relationship between his and which or whose? Because if you recall, that was the discussion that we were having. Was GISTE said that his is an adjective modifying routine. It says which routine, and I say no, his says whose routine. So, like, and this maybe we can answer. Like, we've got to break this problem. We've got to break this issue down. And so, even though this part is pending, I think we can maybe answer this one. What is the relationship between his and which or whose? And I think the idea is something like, well, one way to look at it is each word is giving us a piece of information, and you can break down so say you have a sentence like, John's shiny new computer was fast. What's a simple subject? Computer, right? Whose computer? John's computer. What sort of computer? A shiny computer. What sort of computer? A new computer. So, when you're thinking about framing the information conveyed by the words in the sentence in the form of a question, and you're thinking about which word to use, there's some optionality, but there's some that would be clearly wrong. Like, if we said, which computer, then you computer, that's fine. Right? But if we said whose computer, then you computer, that's no go, right? So I imposed some order on this little Ulysses sheet, where I was keeping track of my thoughts. So I said, GISTE discussion, primary sentence under discussion, John gets sweaty when he does his exercise routine. Rewritten, John gets sweaty when John does John's exercise routine. Alright, some background. I said, point under consideration. Is his exercise routine describing which routine or whose routine? Or are both acceptable? And then I've got first question, what is his? In terms of a parts of speech analysis, and that's pending. And then second question, what is the relationship between his and which or whose? And so what I wrote is, one theory, the possessive determiner, because that's what I think which and whose are in this case we're talking about, that you use to characterize what something like his is describing should sound right if used in a sentence to ask a question about what piece of information his is conveying. That's not actually an answer to this. This is more like you're right, this is an answer to a different question. So I just marked this question as pending too. And so I wrote a question that matched my answer. So, third question. How can we tell if you're using the right word to characterize his in the primary sentence under discussion? And so I say, one theory. The possessive determiner that you use to characterize what something like his is describing. So I already read that. Okay. So, Each word in a sentence gives us a piece of information. You can describe the information in the form of a question. For example, John's shiny new computer was fast. What is the simple subject in the above sentence? Computer. Yada, yada, yada. And so I went through all that. So now, so I'm proposing a test to figure out if we're characterizing his correctly. So let's bring his down here. Right. So I tried applying my test, and because this is interesting, my test works sometimes, but not for the example that I want. Like I said, whose computer, the new computer? That's just wrong. But for this example, whose exercise routine, his routine, which exercise routine, his routine, those both sound okay. I like who's a bit better, but it doesn't scream to me that it's like, oh, it's this clear rule, GISTE is wrong, he's violated the laws of grammar. It seems more like a style thing. I could be wrong about that, but this theory does not give us the answer. For deciding this case. It gives us some criteria for some cases, but not for this case. So that's a problem. I just said refuted due to, so this theory is refuted. Well, it's actually, it's like contextually refuted. So yeah, refuted as a theory for, I'm simply, you know, failed to provide answer to point under consideration for primary sentence under discussion. So this is tentatively refuted as a solution, even though it gives us answers sometimes for other sentences. So I've added another question. So we're getting a lot of questions. What are the established meanings and usages of which and whose? I'm just trying to think of questions that could shed some light on this. And so I've actually already looked this up some. That's where I was going to take this video, is this question. But I thought of other angles, and I'm getting a bit tired, so I'm gonna actually call it a video here, I think. And for the next video, hopefully we will have enhanced, like, super HD audio quality, because I'm upgrading my microphone situation. So, okay.